Hello and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the Algebra 1 concept of identifying functions. This is standard A.12A in the great state of Texas, and we are using item number 38 of the 2019 released STAAR test. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and take a moment to pause the video, work this problem out on your own, unpause it, and we will look at our answers together. So we are trying to find the table that does not show y as a function of x. So let's define that because it's not going to be on our mathematics chart, on our reference materials. Now thankfully, if you took 8th grade math, we've been dealing with functions since 8th grade. So it's the same idea as we learned in the previous grade level. What is a function? Different ways to define it. One that I find the simplest is if we look at it like this. Each input leads to one output. Now what do we mean by input and output? Well, hopefully when we're saying input, you're thinking independent variable. So in most situations, and it looks like we're doing it in this situation, those are going to be your x values. So in your basic vanilla equation, x is going to be your independent variable. That's your input. Now sometimes you get a certain word problem and it's an r or a t or something like that. So you have to do a little bit more work to figure out what's the independent, what's the dependent. Because that's what this output is. Your output is your dependent variable value. And in your vanilla equation, it's going to be the y value. So your independent or your input is the x, your dependent or the output is the y. Now, sometimes it will be f of x, g of x. The dependent variable can sometimes change. But in this situation, we've got x and y. So, what do we have here? How can we tell? There's no labels. Well, if each input needs to lead to one output, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to think. If we were to graph this, right? If we were to graph something, there's something that we could do called the vertical line test. And what that means is we're going to draw a vertical line, and it's going to go down the x values, right? And we're going to look to see, does that vertical line hit the graph more than once? If it doesn't, well, that means that each x value only leads to one y value, so we're good to go. But if for some reason you were to draw a graph kind of like this. You see how it kind of doubles back on itself? This fails the vertical line test because I've got this x value that actually leads to, in this case, 3 different y values. So that would not be a function. But if I were to draw something that's just like a basic parabola, well, that's, no matter where I draw my vertical lines here, those are all going to hit the graph just once. So this is going to be a function. This would not be a function. So let's take a look at this. Now, we don't necessarily need to graph this. We could if we want to, even though the fraction is going to make it kind of difficult. But take a look. Do I see any repeats? So if I don't see any repeats here, right, if I've got 5 different x values, 1/10, 1/8, 1/5, then automatically they're going to go to different y values because I don't have the same x popping up more than once. So no matter what this looks like, right, my scale would have to be different. I'm going to have 5 different x's. They're each going to lead to a different y. So this is a function. But I'm looking for the one that is not a function. So let's not get confused there. Let's look at g. Okay, if I were to graph this, right, and I've got a 14, 15, right? So I've got my 14, and then my 15, and then my 16, and then my 17, and then my 18, right? Even if they're discrete rather than continuous, each x does not lead to a different y, so that's also a function. Now, take a look at this h. I'm just looking at the x values. I see a repeat there. I look at my negative 0.02, and it leads to 5.8, and it leads to 8.1. So look, that's going to break my vertical line test because I've got one input leading to 2 separate outputs, and it can only lead to one output. And then there's no repeats here. Negative 24 and 24 are different. So my answer here is H.